Hello and welcome to the Idiot Book Nook. My name is Blazewing and my pronouns are they, them.
I am the Reading Dragon, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Lady Punnet. My pronouns are primarily she, her, sometimes they, them. Today is a she, her kind of day.
And my name is Krisha. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. Today is I'm really tired and I need to go get a blanket because I'm cold.
Love it.
It's a blanket burrito type of day. Critterito. It's a critterito type of day.
Today we're delving into another episode of Tongues, Tangents, and Tittilations. We are going to be talking about what constitutes reading. But first, I have something I want to get into, and before I do that, if you'd like to follow us on social media, you are more than welcome to do so at lanktr.ee/idiotbooknook, where you'll be able to find links to our podcast, to our YouTube. You'll be able to find links to all of our individual projects. And just as an added note, I would like to thank each and every person who listens to the podcast and has come across our YouTube channel, because we have officially hit 100 subscribers on YouTube.
Woo!
So thank you very much for that. That is huge. We are slowly climbing, and that is great. Anyways, before we get into all of that,
Slow and steady wins the race. Thank you, everyone.
I was asked to describe one of my favorite book series, which is the Blood of Eden series by Julie Kagawa. A lot of people look at it, see it as cringe. A lot of people look at it and see it as not worthy. For me, it strikes a lot of chords because it touches on a lot of topics that I fairly enjoy. Another book, just offhand, that I enjoy is a book called Nadia by Pat Murphy. This is about it's basically a book about a werewolf, and it takes place in the Old West as they are crossing. I think they come across the desert at one point. They're moving from the east to the west. It's something like that. Deals with a lot of death in the family, deals with a lot of hardships on the trail, what it's like to be an outsider. And it gives... What's the word I'm looking for? The book takes me and drags me in, which is mostly what I look for. But if you're looking for something to read, keep in mind this was written in the 90s, so some of the language may not necessarily hold up by today's standards. I can't remember, it's been a while since I've been through it. But I would highly recommend going through this book. Anyways, Lady Punnet, what is our topic for today?
All right, so our topic today is what counts as reading. Now, this can sometimes be a controversial topic due to the fact that when people think of reading, they usually think of like, oh, you open a book and you read what's on the pages. However, as we all know, sometimes that's not always possible, whether for learning disabilities, dyslexia, people who are visually impaired, or just straight up blind. So audiobooks is a thing, but some people are like, hey, audiobooks don't count. Or the more stubborn people that are like, oh, fantasy isn't actually reading, or sci-fi, it's only true reading if you read the classics like the Odyssey or things from Shakespeare. Now, first and foremost, in doing my very fast 10 minutes of research, because we chose to do this 10 minutes ago, I decided to go down a small rabbit hole. And it turns out that listening to an audiobook and reading a book activates the same regions of our brain. So regardless of if you prefer to listen to a book or listen to four ladies talk about reading books or reading a book, it still activates the same part of the brain.
Ha!
And
Science
the reason
wins.
for this And the reason for this, according to someone named Louisa Smith, an editor and founder of Epic Book Society, is because you have to listen word for word to make up the narrative.
I wish I could activate my brain.
Yeah, that's the other reason why we had to do this today. None of us had the brain power or the spoons to actually read a book today. And you know what? That is valid. Sometimes our brains don't let us do that. It's hard for people with ADHD to open a book sometimes and spend like 20 minutes to an hour reading a book. And that is fine.
So,
And here I am just having found my physical copy of the damn book we're going through right now. Because yes, I knew I remembered to actually have the book easily accessible to me for when I moved across country. I just forgot how easily accessible. And I found it the other day, actually last week, and I was like, hey, cool. I can finally just like go back to reading the physical copy now. Yay! And then, yeah.
So, audiobooks, graphic novels, comics, print books, like print media, ebooks, classics or no?
Even comics count.
Yeah, I want to know if you can get into them. I'm not somebody who can get into comics, but I mean, there are people who, I know people who can. Whisper has like a fucking crate of, like bin of comics. What
I
do
used to have a really large collection of comics, but over the years between like my grandmother having some things for my storage unit and then getting all that moved with the storage unit company for 2019 and what have you, a lot of my things and my grandmother's things were stolen. So.
What are your guys' favorite way to enjoy a story?
So,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, Critter, you can go ahead. I've done a lot of talking already. You first.
Fine, I'll talk. So generally speaking, like for like in my own personal taste in terms of how I enjoy a book, I like having like paper book experience. And just I like having the book, I like smelling the book. Like for me, it's a whole thing. But I like I read on my computer with it. I'll listen to ebooks if I'm cooking, those kinds of things, because I still get a similar reading experience. So, like to me, I'm the same opinion. It all counts as reading. Um, I prefer having a book, but I totally appreciate the convenience of all the other forms that are now available that weren't when I was like first really getting into reading. But I have it all. I have the comics, I have the graphics, I have I my house has like four bookshelves that are floor to ceiling that are filled with books.
I used to have a giant bookshelf just behind this curtain pressed up against the wall. If you guys remember the old layout of my office area, there used to be like a giant cubbyhole bookshelf. I got rid of it because it was taking up too much space and it was giving, extremely cluttered. My bookshelf now consists of this, and excuse me, it is like a trash fire at the moment. But these are nothing but vampire novels that I've collected over the years. So it's not as big as it was, but I mean, it's at least manageable now.
So, for me, as is most things in my life, how I enjoy reading is purely conditional on my state of being.
Yep.
So, for example, if I am at home, I like to read fan fiction on my phone.
Yep.
If I'm, say, gonna be on, like, a long car ride where I get to be the passenger for once, I like to read graphic novels because that's easier on the eyes than just straight up like reading a novel.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to be in a foreign destination like Cuba, I bring several novels because I am a speed reader and I can get through one novel in a day. So I'll need an additional few novels just so that way I can like enjoy them, and sometimes I'll reread them. With us, we've been reading novels, which is actually what's gotten me back into reading actual like novel books. And it's not because I don't enjoy reading novel books. I do. It's just sometimes I need some reason to do so, and it's hard to do that when I have like literally say, "Oh, I want to read a fan fiction that has like my favorite pairing that's super rare." Oh, I'll just pull up Archive of Our Own, and oh look, I can search, and there it is, and it's like a quick fix. And I can't do that with novels.
And there's also the matter of having the time to read a full novel.
Or the internet connection. I know that's a foreign concept in today's world, but the reason I bring that up is because Whisper may or may not have booked vacation for us this year. And we are going to a place where you actually have to pay per minute for internet usage. Which means I'm not going to have easy access to internet for 7 days.
So you'll definitely want to get yourself like a hard drive, or maybe like a micro USB card for your phone, so that way you can store offline versions onto the frickin' external sorted, or Kindle.
What I'm planning to do is take my phone and my tablet and a couple of books with me, and all of the books that I want to read I'm going to download to both my phone and my tablet. I'll have a couple of backup books just in case. Might download a couple of audiobooks and see what that entails. But I plan to have a few books with me. Right. Anyways, go ahead. Continue. Dragon?
No, I didn't.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm the same way as Critter. When it comes to like, I prefer having the book in hand. However, I do also appreciate the other convenient ways of intake of novel and book reading and comic reading and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be really interesting to see and experience how in audiobook format comics and graphic novels are done. And the thought that pops into my head is basically, it was an anime that I had binged recently called Welcome to Demon School. It's so cute and so funny. It's a slice of life high school anime, and the main character reads graphic novels to one of his upperclassmen because she can't understand human language.
I do agree that there are certain benefits to having an actual book in your hand. But what about avid travelers? People who are like always on the go and don't have room or time for physical books.
I have the Kindle app on my phone.
I've got an ebook reader here, which I actually have to charge and make sure it works and whatnot. I think it's e-ink. It's an older model. It's like e-ink before actual backlighting came out for them. I also have the Kindle app on my phone and my tablet.
I need to get a new e-reader because mine broke.
Yeah.
What I do is I usually bring like a favorite book of mine, because at least that way, even if it's like, oh, it's a favorite book, I usually choose a favorite book that I haven't read in a while, because that way it's like, oh, I know it enough that I won't be surprised, but at the same time, it's like I haven't read it in a while, so it's not overly familiar.
Okay, so let's look at I guess the difference between paper books and audiobooks.
Audiobooks are technically easier to transport with, because let's face it, you can store potentially up to like if you have internet access, you could have thousands of books on your phone. And if you're storing them on your phone, I think sometimes, like most iPhones, if you have like limited apps, you could probably have maybe up to like 40 books.
So, physical books, the downside is, being bulky, hard to carry around.
They can also get damaged.
Yep. With ebooks, you can get them in, various formats. There's .epub, there's .mobi, there's .pdf. PDF being, of course, the most versatile because EPUB and Mobi files are, I think, proprietary for Kindle and Kobo, if I'm not mistaken. And can definitely range in size depending on the file. Audiobooks, however, I think the average size is somewhere between 280 and 300 megabytes. Now, keep in mind, I just upgraded my phone last year, but I've got 256 gigabytes worth of storage space here. That's without an external SD card, which I don't actually have access to because this doesn't have an expandable memory slot. But I can also hook up like USB drives to it because I have a connector for it. I can load books that way too. And expandable memory, that way I've got 32 64 gigabyte thumb drives. So literally you could have like a library of thousands of books with you.
As long as they're in a small enough format in terms of like how big the file actually is.
Well, let me do a quick search here. So your average audiobook is between 280 and 300 megabytes. Your average ebook, 2.6 megabytes.
Yeah.
So, for people who might not necessarily get into might not necessarily be able to get into the classics or into print media, which is your traditional style of reading, what are thoughts on anything other than print media not really, or the classics not really being a suitable form of reading, like suitable for reading?
A lot of classic literature being looked at nowadays, most people, in my experience as well, have found that it has not aged well, a few of them. For example, when I was doing my audiobooks more consistently in my fan readings, there was the Halloween special that I was trying to work on coming up, and one of the books I had wanted to do, and basically I wanted to do Sleepy Hollow. Unfortunately, the original story of Sleepy Hollow has a lot of, let's say, colorful language in it, especially when describing some of the other characters. And I was unfortunately not able to actually read through the book on my own without feeling this immense sense of discomfort for reading it. And I thought, oh, hey, look, originally I thought, oh, hey, lucky me, I could get the whole book for like 12 cents on Amazon. And then I found out why. It was only 12 cents. So it's one of those things where when it comes to classic literature, yeah, some people might enjoy reading it. However, others, especially today, might not appreciate those works of literature as much as, say, our generation or generations before us because of how our mindsets in terms of societal norms and sociology have developed over the years since those books were written.
I think we also have to look at the fact that we're getting into, no, times past, we haven't really had access to a lot of the technology that we have today. And with our technology growing exponentially, I also think that we're going to be seeing other forms of reading. Things that wouldn't normally be seen as reading being developed. Case in point, we are developing very basic holographic technology right now, and we are developing VR technology right now, which means the ability to immerse yourself in complete other worlds or other environments, such as maybe a studio that, like a studio library that has access to thousands of books there, or maybe something even more akin to a holodeck from Star Trek, for instance. That could in itself be considered a type of reading, because you are still experiencing the story. You're not the one telling it, you are the one experiencing it. So could also be considered a cross between reading and role play.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. Visual novels are a thing.
They are. I actually have a few.
Sorry, Paulina, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's Critter.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I think I forgot what I was going to say anyway.
I was talking about Star Trek holodecks, and the fact that they could be.
Yeah, I think I don't. Anyway, but I remember. I mean, depending on the kinds of video games you play, some of them have an extensive amount of reading, but not just that, but reading comprehension.
Yes.
Because, like, I'll use an example of something I'm doing right now in Remnant 2. There's a shit ton of puzzles. And they will give you, like, actual, like, books and diaries and shit that you have to, like, find. And you have to read through that and make sense of it in order to sort everything out if you want to move forward.
Yep.
So it's not just, like... So, I mean, there's lots of things like that scattered everywhere.
A lot of games these days are incorporating shit like that. It's not just the video game itself. Take Cyberpunk or Skyrim, for instance. And Skyrim is a fairly old game by today's standards. Like, it came out ages ago.
I fucking love that game.
Right? But looking at Skyrim has so much back lore in it, in the books that you can collect throughout the world. As a matter of fact, in my current save file, in my current run, I have taken up the task of trying to collect every book that I can find and making sure I don't have any doubles in the library. And then eventually I'm just going to sit there and do reading streams where I go through the books one by one and read the stories that are in this just for the back lore. But Cyberpunk 2077 also does this, where you have electronic files or electronic pads, chips with stories and back lore and hints. Sometimes you have to go sifting through all of this information to find out what your next quest objective is. So they've actually incorporated these stories into the main story itself, not just for back lore anymore. We could expand that way and say that in some respects, video gaming these days, depending on how the game is set up, could be considered reading a story as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, especially games like Skyrim and Cyberpunk and just literally any visual novel ever.
I mean, we're doing one here slowly, Shadows of New York. We did Coteries of New York previously. And I have a bunch more of those visual novel style books once we're done.
Hell, we started this Twitch show, Idiot Book Nook. We started Idiot Book Nook with Doki Doki Literature Club.
We sure did.
Actually, we started it with Coteries of New York.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right, it's been a while. It's been, what, a year or two at this point?
A year, a little over a year now. Happy anniversary!
But yeah. Naturally, you're going to get, I think, the purists who are like, no, it's only classical literature. It's only physical books. I do think that, reading an actual physical book is a lost art form because not a lot of people do that. Like, it may end up being a lost thing at some point as we move forward with technology. But we have the potential for so much more, especially when it comes to storytelling.
Except here, apparently, because we're gonna have a big awkward silence.
What about what about fanfic?
I think,
That totally counts.
yeah, because you're still reading like written content or like the other formats of content created by someone who has taken like the source material and either written like fan theory or like you said the fan fiction. Paulina would be more of the expert on that, or anyone here that reads fan fiction more than I do.
Critter would also be an expert on that, I think.
So you two can have the floor on this one.
Despite the fact that they're not traditionally published. Or they're not formally sorry, I shouldn't use the word traditionally, formally published.
Even formally published would not be a correct term anymore, because there are sites now where you can self-publish your work.
Yes.
And potentially earn some amount of income for it, depending on how you go about advertising. Hey, if you want to support me, here's where you can support me financially.
And a lot of the there are not publishing companies, but there are guilds out there that will not take you seriously if you self-publish. They want you to go the traditional publishing route. Yeah. It's elitist.
Yeah. That being said, though, a lot more people are going the self-publishing route anyway, and it's to the point where it's like, do we really need the traditional routes anymore? Because I'm almost just on any social media feed I frequent anymore, I see advertisement after advertisement for books with the stamp of New York Times bestseller. It's like, how many books a week does New York Times put their stamp on? And out of all of those, how many are like the legitimate stamp?
New York Times bestseller is actually a red herring. It is a lie. And the reason I say that, in order to get a New York Times bestseller stamp on your book or on your writing, you need to have a certain number of copies of your book purchased. That is the metric. Which means if you're sitting on a pile of cash, you can literally buy enough books to meet that threshold and then do whatever the hell you want with them. There are companies, publishing companies, that will get that New York Times bestseller stamp, buy boxes and boxes of books to get it, and then let those books sit in warehouses and rot.
How many books do you have to sell to be a New York bestseller?
Let's find out.
That's fucking awful.
It has nothing to do with how good it is or how many people enjoyed it. It has to do with how many books are bought. It is a lie.
See, and that's part of the problem that I'm trying to point out here when it comes to going the traditional route in publishing anymore. Because you have shit like this.
It's elitist. There's a lot of shit within, like, writing that is highly elitist. If you want to become a bestseller, you must sell at least 5,000 to 10,000 books in 1 week. That is according to startawildfire.com. We've got selfpublishing.com. You must sell at least 5,000 books in 1 week.
Is there a price threshold, or?
Nope, just the number of books. It is a lie to get... It's a marketing ploy to get people to buy books. Oh, that one's on the bestseller list? I should go take a look at that. Never mind the fact that the author of the book or the publisher of the book has millions of dollars that they can spend on that shit. They literally just buy them and sit on them. Yeah, I was kind of pissed when I found out about that too. Because
I find it insulting, honestly.
yeah, well, there's a lot of stock from certain people put into the New York Times bestseller stamp, but it's a marketing play, psychological thing. What are your thoughts, Critter?
Oh, absolutely, it's a scam. I mean, yeah, no, it's the like the most of the advantages that I can think of when it comes to like publishing houses and stuff like that are not really things that you can apply to them anymore. There used to be a certain degree of like protection, accessibility to things like,
Honor?
you know, yeah, and yeah, but like access to editors and shit like that, but like good ones, not some schmuck they'll say they edited, and when you read it, they obviously didn't fucking read.
Yep. Yep.
Out. Believe we've been through. Yeah.
We had a prime example of that earlier in the year.
Yep. Speaking of which, I need to get back into editing that. So I'm going through. I've been taking way too much time with that, but I did offer to edit it for her and at least bring some sort of coherency to it. I think moving forward with the technology that we're going to have, not only are we going to be seeing new ways of incorporating reading, we're going to be seeing better ways and more adaptive ways for people who might not necessarily be able to go to the traditional route. I think we're going to start to see your traditional publishing companies start to take a massive L. Like a massive fucking hit. And I think that a lot of them are going to end up going out of business. Because now you've got all sorts of ways for people to self-publish. I mean, hell, I can sit here and write for 2 days, take what I've written and throw it into a PDF and fucking market that shit. Hell, I've done that.
Well, like, I mean, like I said, like, as someone who likes physical books, I love going to bookstores.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't go to any of the like big box like stores anymore, like Chapters, Indigo, all that shit, because there's no actual books there anymore. And if they have a sci-fi aisle, it's like one fucking rack
Or one shelf on that rack.
Yeah, exactly.
Or one tiny little corner or end cap.
Unless
Like,
you're at one
what
of the
the
big...
fuck?
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just swearing.
Unless you're at one of the bigger stores, like, say, Barnes & Noble or Chapters, and you're at a bigger... you're at a bigger location. They're going to have more than that one shelf or that one rack. Your smaller stores like Kohl's, yeah, they're not going to dedicate as much space to that, because that's not what brings them in money.
Last time that I went to Chapters or Indigo, not long ago, like not even like a month ago, it was the big one out by West Ed. There was one row
Oh shit.
for sci-fi. One row for sci-fi. That was it. And then 2 rows for fantasy, and that was it. That was it.
Ow. What's up, Dragon?
Even I've started to see the dwindling of the section size for those particular genres in the Barnes and Noble that I used to live down the hill from when I still lived in Idaho. Like, over the years, living close to that, and it's a bigger Barnes and Noble too in that area. Even I had started seeing them size down those sections.
That's
in
gross.
favor. Yeah, and funny enough, I think their religious section and their occult section, oddly enough too, had gotten like this is just from the last time I was there back in March when I was seeing that one fellow. But basically the religion and occult section had actually gained a shelf.
That makes me sad. I remember being able to walk into a chapters and literally spending like 3 hours perusing entire shelving racks of sci-fi and fantasy books.
That's why I only go to the used bookstore now. I only go to the Wee Book one. That's
Fair.
the only one we go to because
Part of the reason I believe is not only can you buy physical copies online nowadays, but there is places like even Amazon. They have an option if you are a publisher on a site that you can sell books on. You can set up a system that gives your customer the ability to print to order, which means you don't have to like put in what you're selling, the novel or the book that you're selling, and you're not having to get a whole bunch of physical copies to sit in some storage unit. You can set it up to where if your customer wants a digital copy, they could just download the digital copy after purchase. If they want the physical copy, you could set it up to where it's a print to order and it just prints to like for that person and it just ships directly to that person.
One sec. Undead Lores, rating with a party of 8. Thank you very much. Welcome on in. How was your stream?
hello, welcome.
What were you playing? I don't know. Is my shoutout command not working? Yeah, went pretty good. Sorry, my shoutout command isn't working. What were you playing? If you happen to be in our audience, feel free to go check out Undead Lore. Give them a follow. Was running D&D for some friends. Fun stuff. Another type of storytelling actually ties really well into our discussion today because we're talking about, what constitutes kind of reading, what constitutes reading a story specifically, or experiencing a story.
And there's a little sprinkling of what constitutes as writing as well, but we're focusing primarily on what constitutes as reading and how one takes information.
So my name is Blazewing. Right now my schedule is Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. At least here. Over on YouTube, I do have content uploading pretty much every few days. And in the Discord, we do TTRPGs like D&D, and we do... I'm running a Vampire the Masquerade game at the moment, so... Stories have so many medias and storytellers and come in all sorts of ways. Absolutely. One of the things that I've actually fallen in love with in building my own stories, specifically with TTRPGs and even more specifically with Vampire the Masquerade since I've started growing and expanding.
So now that you bring up TTRPG, that makes me just realize, TTRPG, especially in recent years, have become it's growing into a form of literature almost, because you got your campaign books, you got your one-shot, your little one-shot quests and what have you, that you can literally go on, say, not just D&D Beyond, but say Cobalt Press or God, there's so many others, and I have email subscriptions too.
Yep.
Like I get little newsletters, but there's a lot of places that you can go to download literally whole campaigns that are completely written out for you. And it's basically just a choose your own adventure book that like those that were really popular back in the the 90s to early 2000s,
Yep.
just formatted to play with others.
Well, Lady Punnet here has actually been helping me world build in not only VTM, but D&D as well. Being able to kind of flesh out the framework for those stories. We're not necessarily talking about reading at this point, but more the experience of, which, again, for people who might not be able to do audiobooks, for people who might not be able to do your traditional print media or even your ebooks, still a way to experience stories. And one of the things a lot of people forget is that storytelling is an ages-old tradition. Doesn't matter, it's something that we've used as a society for thousands of years to tell lore, to tell, to kind of explain the way the world works, to let our imaginations run. You miss Choose Your Own Adventure books? Yeah. They hold a special place in my heart.
It's not that they actually went away. I was actually about to respond to that. They never actually went away. They just evolved to being visual novels.
Fair. But storytelling has been a part of like the human condition literally as long as we've been able to form thought.
Well, storytelling, especially throughout history, was also utilized as a way of passing down traditions and passing down lessons.
And
That's
legends.
where we get, yep, and that's where we get a lot of our folklore and folk tales and stories of
Gods and
even yeah,
gods and heroic deeds and
yeah,
magic and
life lessons.
yep.
Yeah.
A lot of bedtime stories were meant more as, moral guidance.
Heck, even a lot of nursery rhymes. The
Yep.
Muffin Man, Ring Around the Posies.
Yep.
I just realized the old folklore bedtime stories that were meant to like keep your children from doing stupid shit by like telling them stories. Those were the original, hey, here's something to keep you up at night shit.
So, would it be fair then to assume that, reading a book or reading a story isn't necessarily reading anymore? It's more the experience of? Would that be an apt way of, I guess, adjusting that for modern times with a less bit of an elitist approach? The experience of the story as opposed to scanning words with your eyes.
Basically, especially with how technology has been developing all these other forms of, like you said, experiencing a work of literature. And hell, it doesn't even seem that far off now to where we could potentially have the experience of going through an entire novel utilizing technology such as in Star Trek's holodeck.
Or
Like,
VR, which is basically the
VR.
beginning of that.
Yeah, VR being the beginning of that to eventually having entire like rooms dedicated to that and how that could be capitalized. Because we have places like there's literal businesses that specialize in just being a building for wrecking shit.
Mm-hmm.
We got like rec rooms. We have axe throwing facilities now that people can pay for.
Yep.
Who's to say that? And hell, we have like what used to be arcades, just literal play like it's basically a game store, but it's set up as if you have an area where you have like all your console gaming, and then you have the area for all your PC gaming. Like oh shoot, there were like two that I used to live by, both in California and in Idaho, but they're basically gaming facilities that are not just arcade games. They're computer gaming and console gaming for the more quote unquote serious players and what have you. But who's to say we don't eventually see facilities spring up, especially from places that are being abandoned now, like malls. Malls are like starting to empty out and starting to abandon now. Places that come up that advertise the ability of doing like holodeck type or VR type simulations of going through an actual story.
So yeah, it's more about the experience of the story as opposed to the actual reading then. Interesting thought. What does the audience think? Like, do you guys have anything to bring in? You guys today are part of this discussion. Normally we read a chapter of a book and then we sit here and discuss, but we're not doing that today. I'm curious to know what our audience thinks, what their input is. Storytelling and how that's kind of evolved over the ages, or the more elitist approach these days of, well, only these types are experience of a story or the reading of a story.
Oh, what happened? We lost a critter.
Yeah, we knew it was probably going to happen.
Yeah, she'll be back.
Like, I don't really know where to go from here.
I think it's a good time to get audience input at this point. So,
open world role playing games. We've touched on audiobooks. We've touched on ebooks. We've touched on choose your own adventure. We've touched on traditional books. We've touched on not necessarily reading aids, but moving forward into the expansion of new technologies and reading.
The new technologies, when it comes to reading and whatnot, especially when it comes to thinking about, hey, how would like VR or even going so far as holodeck simulators goes. Imagine how helpful it would be for people who are more visual learners anyway.
I agree. We also have the added ability with VR simulators and rudimentary holodecks, like rudimentary holographic technology of maybe experiencing a scene and exploring that in more detail. Like we can actually pause things, we can look around, we can experience the scene that we're in at the moment before moving on to the next one. You want to dig in the dirt? Cool. Grab a virtual shovel and dig, see what's underneath the earth. Talk to your NPCs. They might only have a limited dialogue, but they can at least chat with you. Discussing the idea of storytelling in shared worlds and narratives. How about text-based chat kernels like Muds and Mucks? I am not overly familiar with those, Ferret. I never really got into those. They were a thing when I was in junior high, and then I kind of fell out.
So, text-based chat kernels, like Ferret said, it actually reminds me, I think I still am part of a couple of Discord servers where it is effectively TTRPG. However, it's all text-based.
Mm-hmm.
There's like no meetups or anything like that. You got your storyteller. They text you like their prompt as to what situation you're in, and they basically tell you, okay, what do you do? And then just go from there. And that's how those styles of gamings are done. And a lot of times that can be turned into actual books or something like that. Hell, technically speaking, the website series Homestuck would be considered a lot of text-based chat narratives. Because when I don't know if anybody in this server or in this Twitch stream or even in the audience have actually read Homestuck, but when it was really popular, there were a lot of scenes where all you were reading was text history, like text chat between characters. And the only thing that you had for context, like visual context, was a single picture or a single GIF. But, yeah.
Here's an interesting thought. Before I get into that, though, Paulina, Lady Punnet, do you have anything you want to add? I know you've been kind of in and out of the discussion, but...
Yeah. Sorry, I got a phone call. I have a job interview tomorrow.
Ooh. 1 second. I have apparently screwed up my Discord window. There we go. This isn't going to let me... There we go. I actually have messages from... Bliss. Also, congrats on the job interview.
Yeah, they asked for 3 references.
Nice.
The issue is, though, I only have one person from work I can ask. Now, and I have another personal reference, so I'm scrabbling to find a third reference.
Let's talk about that off stream.
Yep. So currently I'm trying to stop a panic attack.
Take a breath.
Breathe.
I actually have some input from Bliss here. We could also add what counts as writing, and in both cases, fanfic should be a topic of discussion. I think that fanfic has its own place, actually, in literature. Let's see.
Like its own genre at this point.
It's kind of an in-between Discord TTRPG and VR worlds like Second Life. Fair. Fanfics have their own place in literature. It's interesting because without things like fanfic or fan service, as we know it today, we wouldn't have a lot of our classical literature. because a lot of the some of the certain classical literature pieces are effectively fanfics taken from other stories or inspired by other stories. If anybody ever tells you that, fanfics aren't suitable literature to be reading, you can tell them to shove it. Sorry.
Depends on which fan fiction piece you're talking about.
I don't care which fan fiction piece, from your G-rated to your, oh, that's steamy.
What about the cringy?
It's still fanfic. It still has its place. Dante's Inferno equals Bible fan fiction. Absolutely fair. What's up?
God.
What's up, Undead Lore? Like, fan fiction has its place in literature. We wouldn't have a good chunk of this. Like I said, we wouldn't have a good chunk of the stories that we have without it. Whether or not it's cringe, whether or not the author can actually write. Some fan fiction is really good, would argue. Some are better than the original. Absolutely. I'm going to delve into a topic here that is highly contentious. Look at Harry Potter, the entire 7-book series, and then look at Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality.
Yes! I love that one. That's I don't read a whole lot of fanfic, but when I was introduced to that one, oh my god.
Just to name one off the top of my head. I've been told, I haven't actually sat down and read it, but the Methods of Rationality, I've been told, is a hell of a lot better than the original series.
Oh, by far.
What's the premise behind it?
If I remember correctly, Harry was introduced to actual science as a young kid.
Basically, it's what the world of Harry. It's what Harry's story would have been like had Petunia and his mother Lily actually gotten along a lot better, and if Lily had actually helped Petunia with her problems more. Basically, if Lily had been a little bit more of a rules breaker in their childhood, this would have been Harry's life. As a result of that, like, everything else still pretty much happened the same, except because of that better interaction between the sisters, Petunia treated Harry a fuck ton better. And she's not married. She's not a Dursley. She is not a fucking Dursley. She actually gets a decent fellow.
Yeah, she marries like a scientist or something like that.
A highly academic person.
This isn't to glorify that specific piece of writing either, because we all know that book series has a lot of issues. The author has a lot of issues. It's more just to illustrate a point and to bring that to the forefront. It's the first thing that popped into my mind. It's the first thing that I thought of, because for several years, like almost 2 decades, it was a huge part of my life. It's what I know, which ties into another common idiom. A writer can only write what they know. We can only talk about what we know, right? Mm-hmm. If we're more familiar with something, we're probably going to be more likely to shift towards that in discussion or writing.
That also plays into how we create our characters. Especially in TTRPGs.
Bliss says that idiom is BS. Research? Yes, but even with that, research can only take you so far.
And it still falls into writing about what you know.
Yeah.
Because after you research it, you know it.
The thing is, research can only take you so far. If you're looking to experience things, like, say, if you're looking to write some fanfic, you have to get involved with the community. You have to get involved with that specific fandom. That can take years before you can actually suitably write about something. You have to experience it. So I get that a lot of people, I get that people think that idiom is BS, but on certain levels, it holds extremely true. You can only write what you know. You have to experience things in order to be able to write about them.
Especially when you're trying to convey certain emotions or
Yes.
you're trying to describe certain events that are supposed to relate, like be relatable for the reader.
Within a lot, so throughout my academic career, in undergrad, one of the ideas that was introduced, you agree to disagree, that is absolutely fine. You know, this is something that absolutely we can agree to disagree on. One of the things that has been brought to my attention over the course of my undergrad studies, my academic career, it was introduced to me, I think it was third year, when I was studying the concept of, it was dirty girls in Japan. It's not what you think. It's the concept of subculture, counterculture. The fact that a lot of these a lot of the people involved with these movements go actively against the grain of society. In certain circles, they see effectively a shared. They see effectively a. It's almost like a shared brain. We see this more commonly in present day with things like memes of cultural significance. We saw it ages ago in an episode of Star Trek TNG, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. In order to capture those emotions and those feelings and that relevance, or to make a certain point, you have to understand it. It's the very basis of meme culture. Like, if I was to put out the picture of Elmo with his arms wide, surrounded by fire, with absolutely no words, everybody here would understand what that means. But to somebody who doesn't have access to the internet, the cultural significance is lost. You wouldn't understand what that meme is. You just see Elmo with his arms and fire.
Even then, sometimes we will run into that issue, especially when we come across a meme that's like probably really popular in another country. Like, oh, I shared it with you at one point, the toilet head meme or something like that.
Skibidi toilet?
Yeah, I still don't understand what the hell that is, but it was like watching a freaking train wreck that I had to make all my friends suffer with me through.
Yep. Also, like the meme of dicks out for Harambe. Just that phrase, people might not understand.
Like me right now. The fuck?
Was a way of saying remember this moment, or embrace this moment, or remember the fallen. They memed the shit out of Harambe when he died. And from that was born several offshoot memes that were, some of them were fairly inappropriate. But up here in Canada, at least in my city, at least the place that I worked, we had memes like that. So,
I remember.
I mean, it does.
We were having a student elections, or like some kind of election. It was a mock election. It was a party, because we only had like the different members of each political party, come to our school and stuff, and a lot of people had chosen other and put Harambe in it.
I love it. I love it. With that, I think that this is a good place to wrap up. We've had a decent length episode. We've gone down a few rabbit holes, and we haven't necessarily finished off where our topic started off at, but that's the way these usually go. The topic of the episode is more of a starting point for us, I find, with the tongues, tangents, and titillations. So with that, if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can do so at lanktr.ee/Idiot Book Nook. You'll be able to find links to our podcast, to our YouTube, to our individual projects and channels. You'll be able to find links to the Twitch, and all of that goodness. You'll also find a bunch of support links should you decide to support us in some way. Even just sharing things with your friends if you like kind of what we do here.
Some of us even have shops you can purchase our wares at.
We are we're a scatterbrained bunch. We go kind of all over the place some days, but that's why we set out to start doing this. Basically, just a bunch of friends. With that being said, for this episode of Tongues, Tangents, and Titillations, I'm Blazewing.
I am the Reading Dragon.
I'm Lady Punnet.
And Crittershy will be joining us next time. We thank you for being here, and we appreciate your patronage.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Cool.